Do you mind if I ask you a personal question?
No, not at all.
I've wondered whether you might be having some second thoughts about the mission.
How do you mean?
You may be wondering, Mel, why did you make this video about Dialogflow and context? Well, there's a backstory here. Very simply, I had an application, a language tutorial application that I wrote in Python about a year ago. I wrote a lot of code, and it got to be like spaghetti-like, to say the least. It worked. I figured, you know what? I heard a lot about Dialogflow. And I said, you know what? Let me try and convert my Python program to Dialogflow, the same kind of output, same kind of conversation. And I started doing it, and I ran into all kinds of problems involving passing variables between screens. Let me look at the app with you for a second. So the app, a simplified version is the app would ask you what language do you want to speak in screen number 1, and in screen number 2 would say, in the language you selected, like for example in Spanish, it would say, "Como se llama?" What is your name? And you'd answer, you put your name in. And then it would say, okay, in Spanish, it would say, "How are you?" And usually the name is picked up in screen 2. And there'd be a short review at the end. So the key to all of this is the ability to pass parameters between intents. And just how to do that really confused the heck out of me. I said, once I learn how to do this, I'm going to make a video. Specifically how to use context to pass parameters between intents. And that's how we're going to continue. And I have an app, a language tutorial app, which I'm going to use as a sort of straw man to figure out how it all works. And we all put it together. So this diagram wants to show that what's actually happening in this app. All right, the app, what the app is doing, it's when you say hello, it then asks you what language you want to speak. It asks you what is your name. It asks you how do you feel. And then when you say answer all these questions, he says you completed lesson number 1. All right. So what language do you want to speak? If you say Spanish, he goes and he says, all right, what is your name? He talks to you in Spanish over here, right? What's your name? And you reply in Spanish, right? And then after you've entered your name in Spanish and you've entered your language, how do you feel? It asks you, how do you feel in Spanish, right? Remember that? Okay. Mm-hmm. And then it says at the very end, you completed lesson 1 in Spanish. So, all right. So again, what language do you want to speak? What is your name and how do you feel? All right. Well, then the question is, now wait a minute here. We're going to learn about context. So let's take a little closer look at the problem that I'm trying to solve. And we're going to be doing that by looking at an app that I wrote a while back. It's a language tutor under SMS. And it accepts variable input and uses context. So let me start from the beginning. So at the very beginning, the app is initiated when you text the word hello to the app. And from the very beginning, you can see it's saying I'll get to you with different languages. So the key thing here is that we're going to be, the language will be a parameter to the app. Of course, it will be selected by the user, but keep that in mind that this is an important idea of it's a variable input. And we'll type in Spanish in this case. Now here's a very interesting screen right off the bat. It says great, and using the set, you're getting a lot of text. And notice the word Spanish appears in the second screen, which means it's a little subtle. You input the word Spanish, and the second screen or the second intent pops up, and it uses a variable that you entered in the first screen. All right, key idea here. So you're passing on a variable, and we're going to see later how do you do that. And then it speaks a little Spanish. At the very end of the intent, it says, what is your name? Well, the user is being prompted for a name. So there's a second variable coming into the system. We'll type in, actually it says type, it says what is your name and say it in Spanish. So we'll say Jose. And it says, all right, Jose, I'm so glad you want to learn Spanish, it says. So what's happening here? The third screen has a name, Jose, being displayed, which is input to the second screen. And also we see the word Spanish, which came in on the first screen. So the third screen is getting input from two prior intents. Actually, the word Jose, and the name Jose, was passed on from the prior screen. And the word Spanish came in on the first screen. And when you think about it, that's what happened. So the variable 1 was passed to the second screen, and variable 2, Jose, was passed to the third screen. So it says, I'm fine. How are you? He says. How are you? Ask you to say it in Spanish. So now I'll type in Spanish keyboard, first of all. And now I'll say, estoy bien. What happened here? The last screen, fourth screen, says, Jose, you completed lesson number 1 in Spanish. So the final screen, again, is referencing variables, the language, and the name that was entered in prior screens. The question is, in Dialogflow, how do you do that? Not so easy. You have to use the concept of context to pass parameters and variables between screen and screen. Well, in this case, we'll talk about screens. Screens are really generated by intents. That's what we're going to be doing in the next few minutes. I'm going to explain in detail how these variable data is passed back and forward. Okay, and we'll stop the recording. This diagram shows the flow of all the information going from the beginning, from the hello screen, up to the final screen. Then you completed the lesson. So I remember we start off with, we texted the word hello into the app. And then the app, the word hello, woke up the first intent. See, there's 4 intents. Hello, I want to learn, name accepted, and how are you? Each one of these 4 intents, they put up text on the screen and they capture data. And they pass the data to the next intent. So first we got hello. So the first intent, I named it, I called it hello. And he gets awakened when when the word hello was texted to the app. So then it says, what language do you want to speak? Then the user texts Spanish. So when you text the word Spanish, the second intent, which I call I want to learn, he's brought to life. Why? Because he has code in there that parses the message. It's part of Dialogflow, and he has code that gets kicked off, as you know, from when he detects the word Spanish. We're going to go over that a little later. So then, now the interesting thing here is that this intent captures a variable, a parameter, language parameter, and then it says, "What is your name?" Well, then when he says, "My name is Mel," or Jose, the example, then this intent is activated because he recognizes the name, and he's kicked off when you put a name in. Not only is he kicked off when you put your name in, he also is passed a variable, the language. The language was picked up in this intent, and he's passed to this intent because the intent displays the message, Mel, I'm so glad you want to learn Spanish. Why does he know how to say the sentence, this intent? Because he gets the variable Spanish from the prior intent. But how does that work? Well, it works by defining what Dialogflow was a context. You give it a context name. And in this case, we're giving the context name, we're going to give it the phrase chosen language. So when you define a context and an intent, it means that all the parameters, the variables that were entered in this intent are passed forward to the next intent. It was available to all the intents. Because over here, in this intent, which says where the name is at, when you ask, what is your name? It says, my number is Mel. So when this intent over here, when you give it the name, it's a Mel, I'm so glad to meet you. He's activated because he senses a name came into him, but also he needs to show or display the language. How does he get the language? Well, he gets the language because he references a prior context, chosen language. He's over in this intent. So this intent is able to reference parameters or data from a prior intent. Now in this case, you got the parameter, the name presented, right? This intent displays the person's name for the first time. Well, that name is also a variable, and that is this intent. We define a context called chosen name. So now we have two contexts. Chosen name, we define chosen name to be able to reference all the variables in this intent, and we have an intent called chosen language to reference variables that were entered on this intent. Now, in the final intent, when we said estoy bien, remember in the app, well, this intent was kicked off. How are you? And he says, Mel, you completed lesson 1 in Spanish. Well, how does he do that? How does he know to say Mel in Spanish? Well, he references the output context, chosen language he gets from here, and he gets chosen name from here. And that's how come he's able to say, Mel, you completed lesson 1 in Spanish. Two variables, they come from prior intents, and they come from two different contexts. One is chosen language, one's called chosen name. Now, that's the hang of it. Not exactly intuitive. So we're going to go over the actual Dialogflow intents at this point, and you can see the way you code chosen language and chosen name, and also how to set parameters into each intent. Okay. Stop recording. You say hello, this code, this intent is awakened, you see. All right, well, these guys are all pieces of software. So when you said hello, I can tutor you in French, Spanish. That's the reason why you got that message. I can tutor you in those languages, right? And then the last question is, what's the last part? What does it say over here?
I see. I can tutor you in English, Spanish, French, German, Russian, Chinese. What language do you want to learn?
Right. And you pick Spanish, right?
Yeah, I pick Spanish.
All right. So so this intent is going to be done. When you say Spanish, another intent is going to be awaken. And I want to learn. I can't imagine you would figure this out even without me saying anything to you. All right. So now you see there's a table here of different languages. You said Spanish, right? And you see there's a $ language. You see that, right?
Yes, I see $ language.
That means that you're telling Dialogflow to collect, there's going to be a variable inputted by the user. And it's so smart. There's an intent table. There's an entity here. Here's my entity. You see, I defined, these are all possible variables, you see? And then when you define the entity table, that tells Dialogflow, he's extremely smart, Dialogflow, in that regard. He's all right. Not only does he figure out that these languages, if you put it, it's really clever. So now when you do the intent, you see, and I want to learn, and when you create this table, for example, let's say you put you could add something here. Let's say you said Italian. How do you spell Italian? I-T-A-L-I-N. Italian. See that? Look at that. Remember language X, the table, the entity?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So this guy is very smart. So Dialogflow knows you're putting in a variable, and this variable is in the table called entity. And then that allows you out. What's the purpose of having a variable? As you can see in this response, where's the variable in this response, Greg? Where is it? You see it?
Is it where $ language there?
Exactly. So that says, so the guy puts in Spanish. So in my text response, I can say $ language, and it knows that he's speaking Italian or Spanish. It's a variable. Okay, now. So now, before we go, so this is you get this, right? So when the guy says Spanish, that's how it works under the hood, Greg. It says, use the iPhone settings to set up a Spanish keyboard. You see that? So this is how Dialogflow allows you to create a variable response. Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Now you might say, Mel, wait a minute, Mel. Now when I talk about context, again, this is the whole purpose of this thing about context. So wait a minute, what's context? Context is like a state of the conversation. Now wait a minute, what do I mean by that? It means that at the end of this intent, when it's done its job, what can you tell me about the state of the conversation between you and Dialogflow, between the user and Dialogflow? What does Dialogflow now know about the user? What does he know?
Knows the name and the language they wants to learn.
Actually, he knows the language. He didn't ask for the name yet, but it's a good question.
Oh, gotcha.
He knows the language that the guy wants to speak. And that's called, important thing here, this language was created in the intent and is an output from the intent. It was not an input to the intent, it's an output. So the language is in Dialogflow, that becomes a context. A context you can refer to in a future intent. It's very subtle. This is really a state diagram. It's saying, you know what, in the conversation, we've got the guy's language and we're going to use it. And not only that, the parameters, the parameters that he used in the conversation, the language, is now we can make it available to a future intent. Now, by the way, curiously enough, this word chosen language was, it doesn't say I want to learn it. No, it's so the context name is called chosen language. All right. So now remember what happened. You said what'd you say? You said Spanish, right? So let's try it. We actually, in the neat thing about Dialogflow, you could type in, I'll type in the word Spanish to see what happens. Aha. It took you to another intent. Great. Using the settings on your iPhone, set up a Spanish key. So what happened here? What would you say happened here? When you put in Spanish, what happened? Where did this response come from, Greg?
I don't know.
All right, good question. It came from another intent that was brought to life. When you said the word Spanish here, you said Spanish was added on this intent. You put in the word Spanish, and I want to learn, and that brings you to another intent. And let's go over here. Let's go over here. All right. So remember, so the response from the I want to learn was great. Use the settings on your keyboard. I'll say a phrase in English and Spanish. Reply using the microphone and Spanish keyboard. My name is How 9000. What is your name? So now, let's say your name is, you say my name is Greg. I have a question for you, Greg. Why are there always variables here? Why are they in color? Why is that?
Are those responses that people have given in the past?
No, they are training phrases. And why do you think they're in the color?
I don't know.
Because look, we have an entity. And remember, entity was a table of possible variables, right? Remember that, the entity, remember that? Yes?
Yes, I remember that.
Different languages?
Yep.
We have an entity over here. What does this entity say over here?
I see sys.person.
What do you think is in that table? What do you think is in that table?
I'm not sure. Is it all the person, all the names?
Perfect. All the first names. So when you said your name, Peter, Pedro, Joe, he knows it's a variable. You've trained it. Basically, you've trained it to recognize a phrase as a name. Okay. So now let's go down a little bit here. Remember what it said? It said, look over here, it says, so great. Use the settings on your keyboard, set up a Spanish keyboard. Aha, there's a variable here. I have a question for you. Here's the response. It says, $person. What's $person? I guess from here, right? $person from the name of all the name of all this. You just said that. The entity has all the possible names in it. You just said that, right?
Yeah.
$person, right? I'm so glad that you want to learn. And then I say, chosen chosen language .language. I am fine. How are you? Finally come to the nut. The interesting and challenging part of Dialogflow. What do you think is happening here, Greg? It says, Greg, I'm so glad that you want to learn. And it knows to say Spanish somehow. See, it says Spanish up here, English and Spanish.
Yep.
How does it know? How do you display a variable in a content of a prior intent, creating a prior intent? Now, puzzler. Now let's look at it.
And
What do
hey,
you-
Mel, real quick, I'm gonna have to go in about 5 minutes, okay?
I get it. We're hitting the okay. So it says # chosen language. That ring a bell? # chosen language?
Yes, yes.
It was what? How would you put that in word? Well, how would you describe that?
I would just think that's probably like, in my case, that was Spanish, right?
You picked it in the prior intent. And look up here, man. Look up here. What's the input to this context?
Chosen language?
Yeah, chosen language. And chosen language is the context name that has the variable in the prior intent. Remember the prior intent was, tell me the language, right? Whatever it was. The prior intent was, so now you pass, basically what you're passing to this intent is a context name created in a prior intent. In the prior intent, we chose the language. Remember that? We gave the context name the word chosen language, you see? That's how this guy gets variable. But he refers to the context of a prior intent. The context was chosen language. And we gave it a name, chosen language. Remember that?
I remember that, yeah.
Okay. And that becomes the so that context becomes input to this intent. And we reference it by saying that's the intent, that's the context name. And then remember the word language was a parameter. And that's what we have a dot over here. So chosen language dot language refers to the parameter in the context of a prior intent. It becomes it's a variable called language, the parameter language, remember that? And we don't put a $sign there. We put that's the name language, and that we can look at it in a second. Now, before we do that though, 2 more minutes. Greg, how come on the output context, is there any change? You notice anything? What are we passing to the next context? Next intent? What are we passing it?
Is it my name?
Yeah. We're giving it, and we're naming it chosen person. You get it. You did. It says so. In other words, by using the word, you're creating, it's amazing to me. By just saying the word chosen person, you're creating a context for the next intent. And by creating a context, you're also giving it, what else? You're giving it the variable that you created, person. Okay, that's how. So when you type in your name, let's say Greg this time. Let's see if this works. Greg, I'm so glad you want to learn Spanish. I got your name. You see, there it is. Greg, I'm so glad you want to learn Spanish. All right, it's so smart, this thing. That's the name. That's the variable, right, from here, and then. You want to learn that word Spanish is a variable, and it's created by referring to a prior context. All right. Now what do you want to say? I'm fine. How are you? I'll type it. I'm fine.
Mel, I do have one question.
Go.
Will this app still let me be a chosen person given that I'm a Gentile?
Delete that from my video. I gotta leave it in though. Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, fantastic.
All right, so now I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine. Okay, let's see. I am fine. Probably at the end. All right, you can play that. You got your name. All right, so let's see. Greg, you can the last intent has, look it up. Yeah. I'm fine. What's this? This it. Wait a minute. It said, remember, it said I'm fine. All right. Look at this. In order to create the phrase, Greg, you complete lesson number 1 in Spanish. Look at all the code I had to write here.
Yeah.
Chosen Why? What's this word chosen person? What's that? What's that? What does that mean, chosen person? What is that called?
Just gonna
Context.
context. That's right.
Right. And what's that person?
Oh, that's the actual name.
That's the variable, right? And you complete lesson number 1. And what's chosen language?
Spanish. Oh, that's this context for.
It's another context, right? And look up here, by the way. Look what the inputs are. What are the 2 inputs to this intent?
Chosen person and chosen language.
And what are they called? What they called what?
Those are contexts.
Context, right? All right, perfect, man. You got it. You were perfect. And then say goodbye. And now it's something interesting. You can say hello. Let me, is there anything else I want to put to bed here? I think that is it. That's it. And you got the idea. So this is so in summary, now what I have one last question for you, Mr. Greg. How come there's no add output context? There's no output context here. How would you answer that question?
How come there's no what?
Output context. Output context.
I don't know why.
Well, what do you think?
You just haven't written it yet.
What's that?
You just haven't written it yet.
Yeah, I haven't written it yet. Well, it's the end. I haven't written it yet. So there's no output. So whatever
I look forward to one day seeing the output context.
Well, you got this is absolutely marvelous, Greg. That you were patient enough to. I hope this thing on tape works. We got the whole thing. We got the SMS. We got the flow diagram. Did I give you the diagram? I think we did everything. Yeah. All right.
Amazing.
You saw the key point. We did that right.
Yeah.
Well, too bad we couldn't play chess today, but otherwise it's a great day.
Yeah. No, this is awesome. This is more valuable than playing chess. Thank you.
All right, man. Well, how's your family?
Dude, we're doing great. Yeah, everyone's really good.
All right, now you got to capture this file for me. This is gold. This is really gold, man.
You got it. I'll once I get the recording, I'll forward it to you.
And then the music, and you got to get the sound. I don't know how you're gonna do it. I'll be amazing. Let's hope you can do it. But anyway, whatever you did, it was good. It really got me. My juices going.
Awesome. That's great, man. All right. Well, I will. I'm traveling next week, so I won't be able to meet next Friday. But the week after that, I would love to.
Great. All right, thank you.
All right, sir.
Shalom.
It's good to see you. Shalom.